Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Megillah. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Daled. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbayev and Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, Elavdil ben Chaim Lechaim, V'derefua Shenemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Cholei Israel. The rest of the chapter lists the Torah passages that must be read on certain dates each year. Since our Masechet deals mainly with mitzvot applicable in the month of Adar, it begins with the Abba Parashiot, the 4 passages which are read during or shortly before that month. As is widely known, we read the entire Torah in the synagogue over the course of 1 year. On the first Shabbat after the festival of Sukkot, we read the first portion of the Torah. On the next Shabbat, we read the next portion, and so on until the entire Torah is completed. Each Shabbat, after reading the weekly portion, we add a passage from the prophets called the Haftarah, which literally means conclusion, and every portion of the Torah has its own Haftarah. Likewise, each of the 4 passages has its own Haftarah. On a Shabbat, when one of the 4 passages is read, we follow this sequence. First, we read the weekly portion of that Shabbat, then the special passage, and then the Haftarah of the special passage. This Haftarah takes the place of the weekly Haftarah, which is not read. So the 4 passages are the following. Number 1, Shkalim, which obligates every Jewish man to pay a half shekel tax each year. This money, which had to be paid before the 1st of Nisan, was used to buy the communal offerings. Number 2, Zachor, which includes the commandment to remember that Amalek attacked the Jewish people and the commandment to eradicate Amalek. Many poskim rule that the annual reading of Zachor is a biblical obligation. Number 3, Para, which details how a person who had acquired Tumah from a corpse can become Tahor through a process that includes being sprinkled with water containing the ashes of the Para Duma, the red cow. Some poskim hold that the annual reading of Para, 2, is a biblical obligation. And number 4, Parshat HaChodesh, which teaches the laws of Pesach, including the mitzvot of the Pesach offering and matzah, and the prohibitions of Chametz. This passage is called HaChodesh because its first verse of instruction states that this month, HaChodesh Hazeh, meaning Nisan, is the first of the months of the year. The Mishnah begins, Rosh Chodesh Adar shechal liot b'Shabbat korin b'Parshat Shkalim. When Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a Shabbat, we read the passage of Shkalim. This passage is read at the beginning of Adar to remind the people to pay their half shekel tax by the end of the month. And the Sefer Chinuch writes that nowadays, when the temple no longer stands, we still read the passage of Shkalim to commemorate this practice. Chal liot b'toch Shabbat makdim l'shavar. When Rosh Chodesh Adar falls within the week, we bring the Shkalim reading forward to the previous Shabbat, meaning the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh, umafsikin Shabbat acheret, in which case we interrupt the readings on the following Shabbat, meaning we do not read any of the 4 passages in the first Shabbat after Rosh Chodesh, because we want to postpone reading Zachor, which is the next passage, until the Shabbat immediately before Purim. If Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a weekday, let's say for example Wednesday, were Zachor to be read the very next Shabbat, let's say the 4th of Adar in this example, there would be a gap of 1 Shabbat, which would be the 11th between Zachor and Purim, which would end up being the 14th. Therefore, in order to have Zachor read on the Shabbat immediately before Purim, we do not read any of the 4 passages on Shabbat the 4th, delaying Zachor until Shabbat the 11th. However, when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a Shabbat, in which case Shkalim is read that day, the 1st of Adar, there is no need to delay the reading of Zachor because the very next Shabbat, the 8th, is the last one before Purim, which would be Friday the 14th. The article brings down charts, several different charts, A, B, and C, and the article elucidated on this Mishnah. Bashniya Zachor, on the second Shabbat, meaning the second on which one of the 4 passages is read, we read the passage of Zachor. Since this passage commands us to destroy Amalek, we read it shortly before Purim when we celebrate the defeat of Haman, who was descended from Amalek. Bashlishit Para Duma, on the 3rd Shabbat, the 3rd on which one of the 4 passages is read, we read the passage of Para Duma. Since this passage states the laws of purifying a person from the Tumah of a corpse, it is read a few weeks before Pesach to remind the people to make themselves Tahor so that they may eat the Pesach offering. When Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on a weekday other than Sunday, Para is read on the Shabbat after Purim. When Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on a Shabbat, so then Purim the 14th falls on a Thursday. In this case, the next passage, Para, is not read on the Shabbat after Purim, rather it's postponed 1 week so that it can be read on the Shabbat that immediately precedes Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the reason for postponing Para is that its message about purifying oneself should be read as close as possible to the date of bringing the Pesach offering. However, Para may not be delayed more than 1 week because it must precede the Chodesh, and a Chodesh may be read no later than Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And Para is delayed 1 week, not only when Rosh Chodesh Nisan falls on a Shabbat, but also when it falls on Sunday. And again, the chart illustrates the different scenarios for the parashiot. B'revi'it achodesh hazeh lachem, on the fourth Shabbat, meaning the fourth in which one of the four passages is read, we read the passage of achodesh hazeh lachem, this month is for you. Since this passage teaches the laws of Pesach, it is read shortly before that festival. B'chamishit chozin l'chsidran, on the fifth Shabbat, the Shabbat after the reading of achodesh, we return to the regular order, meaning we read the regular haftarah. On a Shabbat, when one of the four passages is read, we read the haftarah of that passage and not the haftarah of that week's Torah portion. Then on the first Shabbat after the four passages, what we call the fifth Shabbat, we return to the regular cycle of weekly haftarot. The Mishnah lists other occasions when the regular cycle of readings is interrupted and the usual reading is replaced by a special reading for the occasion. Lakol mafsikin, for all the following occasions we interrupt the regular cycle. Berashei chodeshim, b'Chanukah, u'b'Purim, b'Ta'aniyot, u'b'Ma'amadot, u'Yom Kippurim. On Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, public fast days, Ma'amad services, and Yom Kippur. We know the Torah requires the owner of an offering to be present when his offering is brought. Therefore, the service of the Tamid, which is a communal offering, must be attended by the entire community, meaning the Jewish people. So for this purpose, the Jewish people were divided into 24 groups called Ma'amadot, and each Ma'amad was assigned a different week. During its week, the members of the Ma'amad who lived in or near Yerushalayim went to the temple to watch the service of the Tamid offering, and the members of the Ma'amad who lived farther away gathered in their own towns. All of them prayed each day of the week, including Shabbat, for the acceptance of the offerings. They read special passages from Torah every day, except Shabbat, and they fasted each day from Monday through Thursday, as it said in Masechet Ta'anit, chapter 4, Mishnah 2 through 4. Now, however, the law is not the same in each case. When Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, or Purim falls in a Shabbat, we replace the regular haftarah with the haftarah of the occasion, but the weekly Torah portion is not displaced. Now, it was possible for Purim to fall on the Shabbat in times of the Mishnah, when the Beit Din relied on the sighting of the new moon to determine which day is Rosh Chodesh, but according to our fixed calendar today, Purim, the 14th of Adar, never falls on a Shabbat. When Yom Kippur falls on a Shabbat, we replace even the weekly Torah portion with the reading for Yom Kippur. And the Tosfot Yom Tov explains that the Mishnah really left out other scenarios like Yom Tov and Chol Moed, whose readings likewise replace the regular Shabbat portion. Public fast days are not observed on Shabbat, and there is no special Torah reading at the Ma'amad services held on Shabbat. In these cases, the only change occurs on weekdays, when a public fast day falls on Monday or Thursday, and at the Ma'amad services of those days, the regular Torah reading is replaced with the special reading for the occasion. Now, normally on Mondays and Thursdays, we read the first part of that week's Torah portion. When a fast day falls or a Ma'amad service is held on a Monday or Thursday, the regular reading is superseded by the reading for that occasion. And the same is certainly true of all the other occasions listed in the Mishnah, like Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, etc. And that is in Rabotai Mishnah Daled. Mishnah Hay lists the passages of Torah that are read on festivals. The Rav does explain different customs that we have. The Mishnah begins, "B'Pesach korin beparashat Moadot shel Torat Kohanim." On the first day of Pesach, we read the passage about all the festivals that is found in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 22, verses 26 through chapter 23, verses 44. This passage details the laws of each festival, including those of Pesach. This is the passage read on the first day of Pesach. On the other days of Pesach, other passages about the festivals are read, as detailed in a bright cited in the Gemara. B'Atzeret Shiva Shavuot. On Shavuot, we read the passage that contains the word 7 weeks, which is about Shavuot. Berosh Hashanah, B'Chodesh HaShvi'i, B'Echad HaChodesh. On Rosh Hashanah, we read the passage that contains the words on the 7th month, on the 1st of the month, which is about Rosh Hashanah. B'Yom HaKippurim Achrei Mot. On Yom Kippur, we read the passage that contains the words after the death, which describes the service performed in the temple on Yom Kippur. B'Yom Tov HaRishon Shel Chag Korin B'Parashat Moadot Shebatorat Kohanim. On the first day of the festival, Sukkot, we read the portion about all the festivals that is found in Vayikra, chapter 22, verses 26 through chapter 23, verses 44, as we do on the first day of Pesach. And on the remaining days of the festival, we read from the passage that lists the offerings of the festival. Each day of Sukkot has its own number of offerings, as detailed there. On each day, we read the verses about the offerings of that day. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.